when you are intrinsically different based off of how you're raised, you kind of realize that everybody has their special differences that makes them unique and important, and you can rely on them for different reasons. And all those pieces of difference is what makes a human being. And human beings are complicated, but they're kind of amazing.
All right, I've got Niki here with me on the Carla Rand Show, and I'm excited to have you on my podcast, Niki, because a while back you did an interview with me where you actually asked me questions, and this time I get to ask you questions. So tell us a little bit about yourself. So first of all, you are my videographer. So you do all the media. So she's got the camera set up, and she's usually the one that does all of that, and she's actually not in front of the camera hardly ever.
Not ever.
And you also record, like for Power Fitness, our video workouts. So you're always recording workouts for us. You do all the podcast stuff, and you do the graphics, and basically like anything to do with like media.
Yeah.
So
media creation.
Yeah. So what got you into that? How come you want to do that?
So, I mean, originally I didn't know that I wanted to get into that. It was a bit of a road to get there. When I was young, like 15, 16, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And then as I got older, I kind of realized that I had this intense love for media, like stories, comic books, movies, cartoons, all of it. And so I wanted to get into filmmaking somehow was the plan. And so I looked around a different school, looked around different opportunities, and I eventually chose to go to Prairie Bible College, or Prairie College now, and do their digital media program, because it was a Christian school and a digital media program. And I thought, good balance, I can do this. And the program, though, doesn't just do filmmaking, it also does design and audio work and all these things. And so I came out with all these new skills and discovered I actually really loved it. I really loved making this graphic designing and making posters and stuff. And honestly, it just fit my life really well because I like working for myself. And so it was good.
Doing your own thing. Yeah, I like to kind of do my own thing too. And it's kind of nice because anything that I get you to do, other than, okay, you have to be here for a podcast, you have to be there to record the videos, but you can basically do it on your own time.
Yep.
So you can sleep in if you want, you can stay up late and do it, you can do it early, you can really do whatever you want.
Yes.
And so that flexibility allows you to also have opportunities to do other stuff too, right?
Yes. And I very much love that. I learned a while back that I can't stand 9-to-5 jobs where you have to be somewhere for a certain period of time, regardless of whether you're actually doing work or not. I really enjoy having a set goal. You finish it, you're done, you can leave.
Right.
And that is basically what I do now, except I do it in my own home at my own computer, and I can like pause and take a break whenever I want to, or just like get it done right away if I have other things to do. And I enjoy that flexibility.
Yeah, and I feel like it's funny because when I hire my staff, I have a hard time saying, this is the position, this is the box I want to put you in. I would rather hire someone that has maybe a few skills that I notice and that is just like a nice person and that I get along with. And then I'm like, okay, like what are you good at? You know, if you're really good at video, then we're going to do more video for marketing and stuff. If you're really good at photos, we'll do photos. If you're really good at marketing or communicating or whatever, like I'd put you to work at the things that you're good at, because when you're running a business, especially when it comes to the marketing, it is quite flexible. There's a lot of different ways to do it. So I would prefer to do it in a way that like that you and my other staff enjoy, rather than try to push you like you have to do it this way.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like you surround yourself with people who are skilled, that you can trust them with the different stuff. Yeah. And then you can delegate.
Yes. Yes. And I'm very good at delegating, probably almost to a fault. It's like, can you do that? Can you do that? Can you do that? But I am also busy, as we all are, but I have a lot going on. So I find if I don't delegate well, then nothing happens. Right. And I have a lot of skills, but I have a lot of weaknesses too.
Don't we all?
Yes. So tell us about kind of where you grew up, a little, like, how did we connect?
Okay. So you and I have actually known each other for longer than you would care to think. Because you were actually, my mom taught you when you were in grade school.
I knew you before you were born.
Yeah. So technically, yeah. And then my mom moved away and met my dad, and then started having kids. And then we moved back to the Edson area eventually. And then we started babysitting for you because you now had your own kids. And so little 13-year-old Niki, not say this was my first babysitting gig, but it was around there.
Yeah.
And then for a while there, we were neighbors. We lived just up around the way from you. And then I went to college, and then I came back, and then I started doing like little odd jobs around Edson. And then right when my summer job was ending, I connected to you through Coach Laura that you actually needed a media person.
Yeah.
And then it just worked so well that right when I needed the job, you were offering the job. And from there, I just been working for you now for I think a little over a year now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy that it's been that long already.
Yeah. And I find it very fun when I think about how, like, yes, I knew Carla Rand back when I was very small and your daughter was very small. And now it's like we're functioning adults and we're both hanging out with each other.
We are functioning. I don't know if I'm always highly functioning. You get to see me at my worst. But we're definitely, we're functioning adults. And it's so funny, to think like how we connected, your mom taught me French and then she went away and then I went away to college, whatever. I came back, had kids, and then she'd had kids and my kids were little. So her kids babysat. Yeah, it's just, and we kind of lived in the same area. Like, it's just really kind of cool. So I think that I know that you and I really value the individual. So even the way that I run my business with my staff, right? I'm saying, okay, I want you to be able to do the skills that you're good at and not put people in a box. So for whatever reason, you and I do not like to be put in a box. You talked about that.
Yeah.
I really hate that. And I don't like to do that to other people either. But where do you think that came from? Like, I know we talked about like even the way we were raised and our schooling, right? We both grew up kind of on farms or in acreages, like out in the country. So that's one thing, maybe having more autonomy, right? Being out and about. And tell us, like, what do you think contributes to it?
So quite a few things, I think. But personally, not a lot of people know this, but I was entirely homeschooled. Like my entire schooling career, kindergarten to 12, homeschooling. Clearly not actually college, but up until that point. And homeschooling is very individualized. Like you can't one size fits all, because like I would do my best work in the evenings, my sister would do her best work in the mornings, and then I would do really good at the art stuff, and then my other sister would do really good at the math stuff. And you really get to see the individual in that regard and get to know them, especially since you're your family and since you're spending almost literally every waking hour in their presence, getting to know them. And so that really helped to get to know people that way. And when you are intrinsically different based off of how you're raised, you kind of realize that everybody has their special differences that makes them unique and important, and you can rely on them for different reasons. And all those pieces of difference is what makes a human being. And human beings are complicated, but they're kind of amazing. So,
yeah, I know I'm so fascinated with human beings. I always say, like, if I lived another life, I'd probably be a psychologist, and I would just like work with people all the time. I work with groups and study the way the brain functions and the way personalities develop and the nurture versus nature kind of arguments and all of this stuff.
So cool. So
fascinating to me because, and I think too, like that also sort of frames our politics too, right? Like we tend to be very much like, freedom, autonomy, let people do what they want to do and let them kind of create what they want to create. Yeah. And you love to create things too.
I do. Yeah. It's deep in my bones, my desire to just make and create things. So this job is great because also the freedom, but also that it lets me make stuff, which is always fun.
Right. And then it's like, it's totally yours, right? Like pick the music for this, find the video clip, make this poster, whatever, right? You can just like run with it.
Yeah. It's a good time.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk a bit too about so you and I, we have similar political beliefs, which is really, really handy, especially these days.
Very convenient.
We were, I similar. I was also homeschooled some, and then I went to like a private school, so kind of back and forth. But I think I really do see that it makes a difference.
Yeah.
Versus going into like the traditional schooling. I think that, there's a bit of a different perspective. And it may be good or bad, depending on what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah. Well, just like anything, homeschooling isn't for everyone. Like some families, it just doesn't work for multitude of reasons. But when it does work, I think it works very well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I homeschooled my kids in their early grades too. And it was nice. The thing with homeschooling, I find too, is like you just let your kid go. And if they're excelling in something, great. If they're struggling, then you help them, right? And so you're not so worried about keeping them with the group. And I think sometimes trying to keep kids in the group can really be detrimental because they might actually get really bored, right? Or you might be constantly pushing them up and they haven't really grasped what they're supposed to know yet, like especially in things like math where it constantly progresses. And so if they're not quite there, but you just keep kind of shoving them to the next grade and they're just like lost, right? And they get sort of fall through the cracks. But I also know that when you're like trying to get a lot of people educated at the same time, you kind of have to do
Yeah, you don't get that luxury of fitting the learning situation to the child or like figuring out what curriculum works best for them. Because like my mom did that with us girls. She would do a certain kind of science for me and then another kind of science for my sister who maybe I wasn't as much into it and just really wanted the bare bones, whereas I would love the technical stuff and like the fun details. So
yeah, totally. Okay, and then the other way that we're similar is in our faith. So we both grew up in, I guess, Christian homes, right? And then, you went to Bible college. I went to Bible college, I guess, for different reasons and definitely at different times. I'm a little older than you. But, how has that impacted you? How does your faith kind of determine what you do, I guess, throughout your life or whatever?
Oh, hopefully everything. Because I would like to hope that my faith influences everything because it was how I was raised. It was how I was taught. It was how I went to school. It was how I learned at school. And it's, even to this day, I'm still very much involved with the church. And I would be a very different person if I didn't have the church or didn't have my faith. And I very much am more than okay with letting it influence how I think and how I act. Because even the reason why I value the individual is partly influenced by the fact that I believe that every individual is a created, loved being by God, like created uniquely in his purpose for a reason. And so I can't see human beings as things to be used. I only see them as people who have a purpose, and that changes everything as well. So to answer the question, I guess, yes. I don't know. Forget what the question was now.
Yeah, well, I think that's the same with me as like the way that you see people. Because I try to see people the way that God sees me, right? So God sees me as, well, I don't see people as I created you because I didn't create them, but as unique and special. And and they each have kind of a different purpose, and he uses different things in their life to kind of shape them and mold them and help them. And I think that that's the same way that I would view individuals too, not just like, oh, they're just whatever, right? Like really like with deep love and connection, even if they hate you.
Because I find people, like I said, people are complicated. And, but when you acknowledge that they are of value, despite their rudeness to you, or that their rudeness to you may have a reason in their past, then it stops you from being equally as rude back to them. And then therefore creating the cycle of abuse where you just continue to hurt each other.
Right. Yeah, I think people need love and unconditional love
so much.
And I think that's what Christ offers us, right? It's this unconditional love, because it's not like, it doesn't say in the Bible that, Christ died for you while you were, sitting in church, wearing the right clothes and doing the right things and thinking happy thoughts. It's like, no, Christ died for you while you were still right in the middle of your sin.
Yes.
Doing the most rebellious, awful thing that you could imagine, maybe that you've ever done in your life. You think of the worst thing. He loves you right there in that. And so I feel too, even if people are annoying me or I feel like they're maybe living a bad life or whatever, it's like, you got to love them right where they are.
Yeah.
But love them enough to try to help them too if they are struggling with something, right?
Yeah. And just like the caveat of like, if I tried to live my life the way I do without God, I don't think I'd be able to like people as much, because the outpouring of God's love in my life is what allows me to love other people. And if I didn't have that little extra, I don't think I'd be able to make it work.
Right.
Yeah.
I know there are times where I'm just like, man, if I didn't have this model of what Christ wants me to do, and if I wasn't in the Word, whoa, could I ever respond very different?
It's more entwined than I think people like to give it credit for.
Yes. And I appreciate you, because when we're doing, podcasts or you're doing video record, like we spend a lot of time together. So it's handy that we, get along on a lot of these, like our values are the same. Yeah. Right. It's really handy. And often too, like I am very much a verbal processor. So I will just start talking and sharing all these kinds of things with you. And, Niki probably has so much dirt on me that she could just like spout it all out. She'd be like, well, Carla thinks this and she says this and she's doing this. But I appreciate that you don't do that.
But candor, yeah.
But like, would you say you're a verbal processor too, or do you feel that you are more?
It's weird because I think of like my brain maybe like an oven brain where I need to cook and ruminate on an idea before I present it to other people.
Right.
And then because often I'll come up to my mom and like I'll make a statement to her like, Mom, do you think this sounds accurate? And I'll just like say it. And she's like, no. I'm like, great, not gonna roll with that. Right. And so it's less verbal processing and more just like casual feedback, because I think I am very much an internal processor. I can like to say a self podcast with myself, where I just like take an idea and ruminate and talk about it with myself until I think it's good enough to share with everybody else. Yeah, I'm a ponderer, I guess you would say.
Yeah, and I'm probably less that way. Although I do, I mean, my head is going all the time.
Sure.
So I think I'm thinking about things all the time. I think what happens maybe too is when I talk, maybe because my mind is going so crazy, when I talk, it's almost like if you write something down, it's the same kind of thing. It's like, okay, I'm going to just quiet the noise and just actually say, what do I actually think here? Which thought am I going to go with?
I would say that that's very similar with like how a lot of people do. And that sometimes the act of verbalizing something can actually make it more of a real concrete idea versus just like the floaty brain stuff that everybody has.
Yeah. Cool. So you said this before, like, what's your favorite part of your job though? We talked about creating. Is it creating?
It's the creation, it's the freedom, it's the getting to hang out with you. Actually, that's a lot of fun. And I don't know, it's just, I've also really enjoyed how much I've learned doing this job. Because when you come out of college with a degree, that's great and all. But it's not until you actually use that degree in a job when you realize how much you don't know.
Yeah. You don't know what you don't know. And then you get in there and you're like, oh.
Yep. Yeah. So I feel like I've actually grown a lot in my skills since I started working for you. And I enjoy that you like to push me and you don't just let me be my mediocre self, which everybody has a mediocre self. But it's good to know that I am in a better working place than I was when I started. Like the videos I make are better quality. I put more thought into the details, and it's like, that's always nice, you know?
Well, I so appreciate that you appreciate that I push you, because not everybody appreciates that I push them. Like, because I think I'm a pusher, right? Like I'm a very driven person. So I'm always like, oh, you could do more and you could do this. And oh, this would be so wonderful, right? And some people are like, that's great, Carla, but like, that's not my plan.
Well, it's very funny because you and I are similar in a lot of ways, but we're also very different in the fact that you are a doer and I am a thinker. So I can come up with a billion great ideas and maybe follow through on one, whereas you come up with like 10 great ideas and follow through on every single one of them. Well, maybe except for one.
Yeah.
And I think that the world needs thinkers and doers who can work together. So that way things actually get accomplished and thought through at the same time.
Yes. Yeah, I think that, that's the thing. I am a doer, like, yeah, for sure. And it does complement it well, because then I can talk through it with you and you can be like, yeah, I think that's a good idea or not or whatever. And then I'm like, okay, let's go with it. So that I can tell you what I think you should do, what I think other people should do. And then we make it happen.
Yep.
Which is...
Occasionally I can be like, maybe not.
But it is so fun to come up with an idea, like, you know, let's say for a video or whatever. And then to see, okay, Niki, go with it. And then you come back and it's like, here it is. And I'm like, that's so good, right? Like, it's so good. You get the music and, you know, it's really nice to be able to just like be able to trust you with that and just be able to know that you can do this, because that is not my specialty, not at all. And so, yeah, we complement each other. And again, the individual, right? Like learning how people are and how they thrive, and our listeners too. I hope that they think about that. Like, you know, it's really good to be self-aware, right? Like, how do you think? How do you process things? And hopefully our discussion gets people thinking a little bit too, because if you know what you're like, then you know better of like what type of job to pursue, even like what type of person to marry, how to interact with your kids. And then just to know that other people are different than you. They're not all going to see it the same.
Yep.
Thank goodness, right?
In some ways, yeah.
Yeah. Any closing words? Any other kind of message that you think people should know or hear?
I think we touched on a lot of the stuff that I would say is valued and important. I don't know. I have a brain that's very much scheduled towards stories. I love stories. And so when I can finally get into the people, like the story of a person, and know that they have a backstory and a future, and I find that very interesting. And I think it's just to reiterate, very important to recognize that everybody has, I guess, to follow the metaphor, a plot line of their own. And then while you may crisscross, it's not like your job to be the main character, because everybody is the main character in their own lives, to make the metaphor more confused.
No, it's true. It's good. And I agree. I think like looking at somebody's story, why do they behave the way they do? There's something going on in the past. And that's where like, I love the psychology of that, right? Like what is triggering you and why? And often when I work with my nutrition clients too, it's the same kind of thing. Okay, well, why are you eating this? And what was the thought process and what happened in the past? And kind of getting into all that. I think it's really important and really helpful for people. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you for what you do, Niki, for Power Fitness, for all the video and media work that you do. And thanks for taking the time to do this podcast with me.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning into the podcast today. I absolutely love that you joined us. I love being able to record these, and I love our guests. It's been so much fun. So thank you. Please like it, share it, comment, do all of the things that you feel like you want to do if you enjoyed this podcast. I really, really appreciate that. And this podcast has been brought to you by my company, Power Fitness Online. So everything that we do locally with our workouts, with our group nutrition coaching, and with all of the other fun events and stuff that we run, we put all of that online. So now you can access everything, even if you're not locally, don't live in our area. So my coaches and I and all my staff, the whole team, we are putting so much work into these workouts. We're filming 5 fresh workouts every single week so that you never have to do the same workout twice. We're also doing group nutrition and personal nutrition coaching so that you get exactly what you need. And you know what the best part is? It's the community. The absolute best part is just knowing that you have the support, that you have the encouragement, that you have everything you need to succeed. So go to powerfitnessonline.com.